Let's talk about money, but not in the way you're used to. Today, we're diving into a book that completely flips the script on wealth. It's not about math, it's about what goes on in your head. We're breaking down the game-changing ideas in Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. Let's get into it.
So this is the book by Morgan Housel, and its main idea is pretty radical, but also makes so much sense. Financial success, it has way less to do with how smart you are and way more to do with how you behave. To really get what that means, we got to start with a wild story from the book.
So Housel kicks things off with this amazing paradox he saw himself when he was working as a valet at a super fancy hotel. And it's all about this one guy who was, for all intents and purposes, an absolute genius.
Okay, so picture this. This guy was a tech executive. I mean, he designed and patented a key part of Wi-Fi routers. He'd built and sold multiple companies. The man was incredibly rich and obviously incredibly smart. But he'd also show up, drink in hand, flashing these huge wads of cash. He even once gave a friend a bunch of gold coins, and they just threw them into the ocean for fun.
This just leads to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? How on earth can a certified genius be so incredibly foolish with his money? It just doesn't seem to add up, but the answer is actually right at the heart of the book.
And that answer, well, it all comes down to the book's core thesis. Being good with money has almost nothing to do with spreadsheets and complex formulas. It's all about psychology. Here is the most important takeaway. Managing money is a soft skill. Your behavior is literally the most important part of the equation. We're talking about how you deal with things like greed and fear and the pressure to keep up with your friends. It's about patience. It's about how you think about the future. You can think of it like this. Traditional finance is taught like it's physics, right? Like there are these unbreakable laws. But Housel argues it's much more like psychology, which is messy and emotional and full of individual quirks. And that's how that tech genius could be so brilliant in one area and so not in another.
This brings us to one of the book's first big lessons, and it's a huge one. No one is actually crazy. Housel makes this incredible point that even when someone's money decisions look completely irrational to us, they make perfect sense to the person who's making them.
Now, to really drive this home, Housel uses this mind-blowing statistic. Think about your own personal experience. Everything you've seen and lived through in the economy, it makes up this teeny tiny, absolutely microscopic fraction of everything that's ever happened. And yet, and this is the crazy part, that tiny little sliver of experience accounts for something like 80% of how you think the world actually works. This huge gap between reality and what we think is reality, that's where all our financial biases come from. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you grew up during a massive recession, you're going to view risk completely differently than someone who grew up during a huge stock market boom. Neither of you is crazy. You're just working off a totally different mental map of the world. Your decisions feel totally rational to you. Okay, so if our view of money is totally shaped by our own limited experiences, what should we even be aiming for? What is the actual point of building wealth? Well, according to Housel, the real answer might not be what you think. It's not about getting a bigger house or a faster car or a fancier watch. I mean, those are just things you can buy with wealth. The single most powerful, most valuable thing that money can possibly buy you is something way more important. That's it, control. The freedom to wake up and say, I get to do what I want today. As Housel says, having control over your time is the highest dividend that money will ever pay. Just think about what that really means. Having some savings in the bank means you can wait for a job you actually love instead of desperately taking the first offer. It means you can take a week off if your kid gets sick without panicking about the bills. That kind of control over your own life, that is what it means to be truly wealthy. So, how do we actually use all of this? How do we put it into practice? Well, the book is packed with amazing lessons, but we're going to focus on 3 of the absolute biggest ones. All right, first, realize that wealth is the stuff you don't see. That Ferrari isn't wealth. It's just proof that someone spent a lot of money. True wealth is the money that's still in the bank, invested, and working for you. Second, save money just for the sake of saving. Life is going to throw curveballs you can't even imagine, and having a pot of money saved up gives you options and flexibility to deal with them. It's insurance against the unknown. And last, but maybe most important, figure out what enough means to you. If you're always comparing yourself to other people, the goalposts will just keep moving, and you will never, ever feel like you've won.
And that kind of brings us to the final big idea here. Instead of always asking, is this decision going to make me the absolute most money? Housel suggests we ask a much better, much more human question. Does this help me sleep at night? Because if you can reframe your goal from just getting the biggest possible return to getting the most peace of mind, well, then you can use money as a tool to build an amazing life, not just a massive bank account. And that right there is what real wealth is all about.